talk about migrant arrests. Over 500 plus with criminal records recently apprehended. Take a look.
Let's check in with Lawrence Jones. He is live down on our southern border in El Paso. He visited Fort Bliss with our defense secretary and our friend Pete Hegseth for that first border visit since his confirmation. And then they also flew on a Black Hawk with Tom Homan as well. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, good morning, family. I just want to piggyback on y'all last conversation because this is why the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, was here. You know, a lot of people don't know, but we have a military assets that focus on the narcotics that impact our country. It was created back in the 60s by JFK, and that's U.S. Southern Command right here in Fort Bliss. That's why the Secretary of Defense was here. He said that we haven't been using these assets the way we should. It's clear that there's a threat coming across the border as it relates to the drugs, and they're going to get active real fast. Here's a little bit of our conversation yesterday.
We have no better negotiator at the helm than our Commander-in-Chief, Donald Trump, knowing how to use economic pressure to get results on the ground. Let's see how Mexico responds with troops and whether or not they actually do stem the flow. But all I know is what we can affect, and we are not going to back down. Intimidation is not going to work. And the message I have for the troops here is across the board is we have their backs. We have your back. We're going to give you the tools necessary to get 100% operational control of that border.
A lot of people talk about the corruption in Mexico. Can we trust those guys? Will they actually be helpful to the mission?
Well, they're helpful. The first administration, President Trump, made Mexico put military on the border, and it was very effective. He made Mexico agree to remain in Mexico program, right? This is national security. When we secure the border, less people die from fentanyl, less women and children sex trafficked, less people on terrorist watch lists cross that border. This is a national security issue. President Trump's going to shut it down.
So some people may be wondering what the setup is. Why have Tom Homan, the borders are on one side, and the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, on the other side? The Secretary made it very clear, Secretary Hegseth, he's going to focus on the outside of the border, going after the enemies there, making sure the border is secure from that aspect. Tom Homan is going to focus on Border Patrol, the interior aspect of it, as well as with ICE, hunting the bad guys, the criminal aliens inside of the country. It's a two-pronged approach, and then you got Marco Rubio that is going to be communicating with all those foreign countries to make sure they take their people back and they prevent them from coming to the country in the first place unless they want to do it the legal way.
That's right. And that's pretty, what's so great about it is that the reason why Trump seems to be running so fast, and it seems like he's done 1 year or 2 years worth of work in only 2 weeks, is because they had already started to set things in motion. And this is how you know that this administration understands how to move, what to do, and how to take care of business. And they had already been planning for this prior to him getting in office, probably even before he ever even won the president of the United States of America. They have been planning on how they're going to take care of and go back to protecting American citizens and have this three-headed monster that basically prevents us from being able to have all of these problems and all of these illegal migrants and all of these drugs and all of these things coming across the border. We're not depending on Mexico to secure the border. We're requiring them to do their part. It's a difference. We send in our own troops. We're sending our own resources, our own monies. We're getting more Border Patrol agents. We're making sure that we're using military equipment, not to do stuff overseas, but to fly people back out of this country over into their own home country. I seen a video yesterday of a illegal migrant that said that their people were incentivized by the cartel and by people in Mexico to scrape together up to $25,000 to get her over here so that she can work and make money and then be able to pay that back to their parents because they're the ones that scraped up the money in order to get her over to the border through Mexico and through the cartels in the first place. So this was a racket the whole time. This is classic human trafficking by the American government in the previous administration, and nobody wants to say the quiet part out loud. There is a woman that basically was saying Let me pull it up for you guys. Let me continue to pull it up.
Right. And yesterday, Marco Rubio negotiated a deal with El Salvador. Now, El Salvador will be a safe third country. So anybody from, let's say, China that China won't take back, we can now send them to El Salvador. They said we'll take everybody, including members of MS-13 and Tren de Aragua as well. So that is going to be very helpful, because just think about it. If you are being trafficked across the southern border by a cartel, I have no idea how they're going to get in. But if they are, how do you make that pitch? All right, if you get into the country,
see if I can find
you
it
could
for you
live in
guys.
San Diego, or you could live in Omaha or whatever. But now the news is, if you get in the country, you might get sent essentially to a mega prison in El Salvador.
That's El Salvador.
Or Gitmo.
Yep. And Lawrence was mentioning Tom Homan, the interior of our country. Over the weekend, they nabbed so many people. ICE did. The senior Trump administration official that talked to Fox News Digital said agents nabbed over 700 illegal immigrants over the weekend, including more than 500 with convictions or charges. And I was looking through the list. One person, a Honduran national,
That's
arrested in
crazy.
San Antonio, Texas, close to where you are, Lawrence. And she had a conviction of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Another one in Seattle, a Mexican citizen with a conviction for robbery and delivering meth. One in Phoenix, Arizona, a Mexican national with a murder conviction. One in Detroit, a Colombian man convicted of domestic violence and possession of cocaine.
So I just want to give you a tidbit, Ainsley, because those are the people that are already in the country. So we got to
That's
prevent
right.
them from even being able to make that journey across. Banks, he used to be the Texas border czar. He's now the chief of Border Patrol, 4-star. He had a process when he was the border czar in Texas with the National Guard, essentially instructing them to push them back. So what you've seen during the Biden administration, a lot of the migrants would just surrender. They've already did the app, and they knew they were going to get a notice to appear, and then they would be released in the country. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, is adopting that same strategy with the troops on the border now. So people aren't just going to be able to surrender. If they see people trying to break in the country, they're going to say, go back. They will push them back. And if they attack those border agents, like with a mob, like they do with some of these caravans, they're going to have the pepper bullets as well, like Texas used then. So you're not going to see this surge of people coming across the border anymore. There are people there to meet them when they try to cross the border.
And of course, that underscores the very vital importance of the Remain in Mexico policy, because if they never actually cross the border, then it doesn't become a problem. It doesn't become our problem.
That's exactly right. And that is why the troops are on fire right now. They got fire in their belly right now. They get to do their jobs. By the way, I told y'all earlier about I spoke with some of those troops. We're actually going to air some of that conversation of me speaking just with rank and file. I mean, in the last administration, we were prohibited from talking with them. We didn't get to hear their stories.
That's
Finally,
crazy.
The shackles are off of them, and they can tell the American people how they feel.
That's great. You said morale is up. And Brian Kilmeade keeps saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that our border crossings are down 93%. Isn't that the statistic he always says?
Substantial.
Is
it's
that
a
right,
big number.
Lawrence?
Yep, that's it, right. And they're trying to get the numbers daily so we can have a track it, but it's
Right.
around the 90s, Ainsley. I think you're correct.
That's amazing.
So Lawrence, when you were in that ride along, in that Black Hawk, going from where you are, El Paso, to the west through New Mexico, how big are the existing gaps in the wall?
There are some big gaps, and I'm so glad you asked that question.
Man, I wish I could find
I got
that
to
video.
talk with the former border czar of Texas as well, who's now over all the Border Patrol, chief of Border Patrol. And I asked him about the money, because this is a question that y'all guys asked me yesterday in the show. He said, essentially, they haven't used money from 2020, 21, and 24. So they're going to already start the construction of the border wall. Now, it's not going to be enough to complete all of the wall. They're going to need that reconciliation bill to pass. But there's enough money to restart the Trump wall that was incomplete.
Have they been able to get all those pieces back that the previous president tried selling off?
No. No, they haven't. They were able to stop some of it because a federal judge made them stop selling off the wall before in that past administration. But a lot of that stuff was sold, and you got to remember, we had
That's
already
crazy.
paid
How you
for
gonna
them.
sell off a
Yeah,
border
And then
wall?
exactly.
they were so.
Check it out. So I was able to find it on TikTok. I thought that I was never going to find it. This is a Guatemalan deportee that is basically breaking down how it works in a lot of ways and why she came over here in the first place. This is what she says. She says, well, I could just read it because we don't understand what she's saying. I have a lot of debt I need to get rid of, is what she says. Because the smuggler took a lot of money from me. Nearly 200,000. Hold on. Nearly 200,000, which is basically the equivalent of $26,000 US. Okay. She says, that's why I need to get rid of that debt. I really need to get to the other side. I'm desperate to get back to the United States of America. This is a deportee. This is a person that was deported back to their country over at Guatemala. To give the best to my parents, they have nothing. We don't have a house. We only have a loan. And so basically, they people is scraping up all of the money that they can possibly scrape up to get them over here into the United States of America. They then basically fund these coyotes and these cartel members, and they're basically going through Mexico and paying whoever it is that they need to pay in order to get over here to the United States of America. And so it then became a racket. It became a racket. It became a place of opportunity because the dream was sold that they would be able to come over here to the United States of America and then make that money back real fast, send it back to their parents, and then continue to take care of them because we were going to subsidize their lifestyle, and it was easy for them to be able to get easy jobs, easy access, easy opportunities, then educate their children, and then have children over here that then become, what do they become? Birthright citizens inside of the United States of America, and then their parents can live like kings back where they were from. It's sad. It's absolutely sad. But when you stop it, and you stop it in its tracks, now people don't have the expectation to come over here and they can start to make their own country great. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Actually, let me go over to this next portion of the show prior to me reading Super Chat, so I'll read Super Chat shortly.